Started. Thank you for being here. It's good to see all of you. I'm grateful that you chose to use some of your time today to be with us and to listen and learn from Francesca Arnoldy, who has been an inspiration to me in many, many ways, but including writing the workbook that we used in the workshop, Living Fully and Dying Prepared. So the name of her book is A Doula's Guide, Death Doula's Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared. She's also a community doula. She's a practicing doula. She as I put in her bio in your invitation, your calendar invitations, she was part of the Conversation Project at UVM. So she's done quite a lot, and I think she's going to be really helpful to us today, and reminding you all too that questions, I'm going to open it up to questions at about 35 minutes after the hour. So without much more ado, I'd like to introduce you to Francesca Arnoldy, and then we'll get started. I'm going to ask a question just to start the interview, and Francesca's going to tell us about herself more eloquently than I did. And so the first question I have for you, Francesca, is what inspired you to create this workbook? And how does this workbook serve as a tool for individuals as well as communities, um, and to reflect on their mortality and to prepare for end-of-life care?
Thanks, Trish. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. Nice to be connected. We're getting a little sunshine, which is a lovely break from all the rain and cloudiness. If you hear background noise, my apologies. There are people mowing and trimming, and I think everybody just ran outside because there's this break in the weather. So hopefully you're enjoying a little sunshine wherever you are as well. I was inspired to write this workbook for a number of reasons. I actually didn't know that it needed to be written until I got an invitation from an acquisitions editor who kind of like cold called me, but like over email. And he reached out and he said, "How would you feel about this project? Are you interested? Do you have the capacity to take it on? What do you think?" And I sat with it for a little while and assessed my juggle at the time, my schedule and energy, and also just sort of sat and wondered, do I have a book in me right now? Because I had written the Doula Heart guidebook, I had written a picture book, and I just wasn't quite sure. I never set out to be an author. Instead, really, these books have come from me wrestling with complex topics and trying to come to more of an understanding myself, and then through that deciding to share with other people in hopes that it might be beneficial in their walk as well. So I eventually said yes. We had conversations back and forth to really clarify what it would entail. And immediately I thought of my own death journal, which is what I call this scrapbook. And I'll just hold it up and show you. So this is my death journal. It's like packed with random things and entries. And it's something that I began working on after I finished my hospice volunteer training. So that was in 2016, 2017. And because that sort of uncorked so many thoughts and so much contemplation about my own mortality, I felt like it was a wonderful, valuable process to go through that training, but there was so much more that needed to come out that was like right there at the surface. So I decided to start plunking it into this journal. And I knew immediately that the journal would have two purposes. It would serve its purpose to me as a place and space for me to reflect and wonder and also celebrate life, and also to share what is on my mind and in my heart with those that I love most. And I had seen a number of people, which I imagine is the case for a lot of you, or maybe you yourself, where somebody had been grieving a loss of a person, a beloved person, and really yearning for that continued connection. In particular, I had a cousin and my aunt who I loved very, very dearly. She died when she was in her 40s. And my cousin, who was in her 20s, searched and searched and searched for years to find one last letter, one last card, one last gift that was meant for her, that she was meant to find. And she held on to that hope that, and she moved into her mother's home and still lives there and hoped that in some nook or cranny there would be that one last love letter. And very sadly, she never found it. And I thought about my own loved ones. I thought about my own children. I think about who knows who, I'm going to outlive or not. Like there's no guarantee. So we don't know. So I think about the people I love right now. I think about if the fates smile upon it, the people I will love in the future who maybe I haven't even met yet. Think about all those people and trying to put something on the page that reflects who I am, how I've lived, my essence, my voice, my messages, so that in their time of grief, when they're yearning for that continued connection, that's where they can go to find me and to find our love that will continue on for as long as they continue to carry it. So I thought like that's what I want to capture in this workbook. So that became the original sort of outline for it is what have I included already in my death journal? And how can I help guide other people through that process in this workbook? I quickly realized I also needed to add in a more gentle introduction to mortality awareness because I recognize that due to my years of study, due to hospice volunteering, due to my private practice as a doula, my community education, I am steeped in this topic much more than the average person is. So I wanted to try to create an entry point that felt welcoming and inviting and not terribly overwhelming is my hope. So I created more of a foundation around the death journaling and then really thought about the order of things. And then as I was working on it, added new ideas that were coming to mind, not only to the manuscript, but also to my own death journal. For example, I was going through some of the core self lists, like the I believe, ... and comfort is ... and what's the other one? Happiness is. So I had already had the happiness is and comfort is. And then I thought, you know what? I want to include beliefs too, because that's a really important part of who we are, is what we believe in. So I asked my two kids, who are teenagers, to sit down at the table with me and do this activity. We each had a note card, and I asked them to write on the top, I believe ... And then we took a couple minutes in silence to fill it out. And I said, it can be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be serious. You can be lighthearted about this. It can be funny. It can be silly, or it can be deeply heartfelt. It's totally up to you. It can be a mix of things. So we each did that, worked on it, and then took a turn to read ours aloud. And it was such a beautiful, eye-opening experience to share that with them, to know that like I have loved them since they were, like before they were born. And I know them better than anybody else could know them. And yet there were things about them that surprised me and that they brought up. So I have those note cards glued into my death journal. And I imagine, even though it's hard to, someday they'll look back, hopefully, hopefully they will outlive me and they'll be able to turn to my death journal and look and find those cards and think, oh my goodness, when I was 13, I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mom and we did this activity together. And it will be yet another point of connection that we shared that is honored within this space. So that's the invitation through the workbook, is that people will begin to contemplate their life and the meaning of life. And legacy, I think, is kind of an interesting term. You know, it can feel really weighty, but I think it's really about what have you held dear, what's important to you, and what kind of impact do you feel like you've made in other people's lives, whether it's just a kind smile or something much more memorable or anything in between. It all counts. It's all worthy and noteworthy and notable. So it's an invitation for people to also kind of turn toward that at their own pace based on their level of readiness and willingness and curiosity and interest.
It's a phenomenal workbook. I should also mention that shortly after you published it, um, I was able to join you for a training to be a community educator using this workbook. And then subsequently, I was also able to take another training from you, which was becoming a certified deaf literacy specialist. And both of those trainings just lit me on fire. And I have had about 10 different workshops now, and there's 6 sessions as you had broken that out. And continued the community um, that you encouraged us to, just really naturally come together over this continues to grow and be stronger and um, connect with each other. It's been really, really, really wonderful. And of course, as you can imagine, the ripple effect of, people who have taken the workshop series and then, to their families and other loved ones, being able to share that. And um, I mean, I could go on and I'm not going to because this is your hour, but, starting with the first exercise of wonderment, at first people are like, what is this? They do that exercise and it just is transformational. So what would you say that you've learned since this workbook has, been out there? What have you, heard as reflections that were maybe aha moments for you? But what, as you continue to immerse and learn so much, what, you know, um, other insight would you share with us?
I mean, I feel like you have so much to share and you have so much experience with this workbook, which warms my heart. And I'm so happy it's in your hands and that you're putting it to use like you are. I'm so thankful. One thing that continues to come up, it's not every person, every case, and everybody here, if you've completed the series, then you may or may not have felt this within yourself. I think it's very natural. Doesn't happen for everybody, but I've seen it enough times that I know that it is kind of a pattern that I have to be aware of and I have to be sensitive about. And that is this reluctance, so it's like this immediate interest in starting a death journal and quickly followed by resistance to actually get started. So there's like,
Mm.
I want to do it. Yes, I want to do it. And oh gosh, but I don't know. But how? But when? But where do I start? What do I say? And what I've noticed when people come to me with that kind of fear, hesitancy, a lot of the time it's because of uh, perfectionism and this fear that if I don't say it perfectly, it's not worth saying at all. And sadly, I was working with a client who had a type of brain cancer But when we first connected cognitively, she was doing very well. And she expressed a great deal of interest in creating remembrance gifts and writing letters to family and doing this version of a death journal. So I said, wonderful, great. Like, let's think about what that's going to look like, what it's going to entail, what form it's going to take, what activities are going to speak to you. You know, there's so much we can do to customize it for your needs and for your energy level. And I'm ready to jump in. And I noticed that during our visits, we'll come up with an idea and I'll see that spark. And I would say, okay, let me grab my recorder. Let's capture this. Okay, let me grab the computer. I want to write this down. Let's grab that card that you said was for this particular person. Let's write it out. And every time we went to actually formalize it and document it, capture it, was the moment that she would like hit the brakes. She'd say, oh, she'd start hemming, she'd start hawing, she'd start saying things like, I'm just not exactly sure what I want to say. So I just need to think about it for a while. And I'm just going to come back to it. But it's a great idea. And, you know, for me as a doula, I don't come in with an agenda and I don't tell people what they need to accomplish. I'm on their turf, their time, their goals, 100%. But what broke my heart in this situation is that she kept wanting to do it, but she kept holding herself back from actually doing it. And in the end, her decline, it progressed much more quickly than anybody expected. And we only had, I should say, we celebrate the fact that we did have one sort of batch of life stories and memories that we were able to pull together with a couple of messages that I kind of pulled out from what she was saying. There was that one document, but there was so much more that she had wanted to do. And she just never felt like it was the right time. It was the right moment. She had the right words. So I try to share that with people. And I try to encourage them to like take the pressure off and remember, if you're going to be leaving this to your loved ones, they want to hear from you. They want it to sound like you. They want it to be familiar. They don't want it to be this edited, super polished version of you that doesn't even sound like you anymore, right? Like they want the misspelled words. They want the pencil lead that broke mid word. They can tell that's there. They want to be able to see, like, did a tear fall and smudge the pen? Like all of those are deeply touching to people. And that's what they're yearning for when they're missing their person. So I try to encourage people to remember that and not think about it like it needs to be the New York Times bestseller on everybody's bookshelf or something. It's very personal and it's generally for a small group of people that appreciate you for particular reasons. And they want to see those like sayings and mannerisms and things that they knew and loved and now miss come through on the page.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I can definitely I not only do I see it, but unfortunately I practice it. So I have to, when I was just telling you about the alchemy book, about the prompts that really inspired me because I had bought the the blank death journal. And
Mhm.
so, but I haven't started it yet. So now I'm definitely motivated. So before I go down to supper, after we finish this, I will start my first entry.
Beautiful. And sometimes that's all it takes is just that first entry. Just get it on the page. And then,
Yeah.
you can jump around, you just date things, but it doesn't have to be in order and doesn't have to be fully categorized. It's fine. Just go for it. Get in there.
And I like your idea when you shared yours, is that, to also use it as a scrapbook.
Mhm.
So there are different things that you can, tuck in there and share. I think that's brilliant.
And I think the
So,
messiness of it kind of reflects the natural messiness of life, right? It's real.
exactly, exactly. Thank you for that. So, how do you define death literacy? Um, And why is cultivating this understanding important?
I think of death literacy as having a fundamental awareness and understanding of the end of life, of that chapter for humanity, what it entails, what it looks like, what it sounds like, and what the associated needs might be of people experiencing dying and death. And then also the death care systems that are associated with it. So, what is available and the resources. And I look to locally, in my own hometown, what do we have available here? What maybe do we not have available that would be helpful? Are there other places? How far are they? And then also online resources and virtual support groups and things like that as well. So both. And the value of it, I think, is I talk about my aunt's death, back when it was 20 years ago, the 20th anniversary just happened. And how when I showed up to the hospital, when we knew the end was near, I was completely clueless about what to expect. I had no frame of reference at all. And everyone felt it seemed from my perspective like everyone was feeling awkward and it was very painful. No one knew what to do with the time that we actually did have with her remaining. No one knew how to navigate it. We were clueless, like death illiteracy, absolutely to the max. And thankfully, I was able to kind of follow my heart and my intuition. And I asked for a little bit of time with her. And I talk about this in the book somewhat as an example. And we shared some moments. I was able to express my love and gratitude and read her this little letter. She was able to whisper, I love you, even though she could no longer open her eyes. And within a couple of hours, she died. And I thought, that planted a seed, which didn't really take root for another decade or more, but it then became my frame of reference that I had been lacking for so long. I finally had some idea of what it actually looked like when somebody was dying, when somebody was entering into active dying, and what to potentially do with that time, with that opportunity, right? Because it can become an opportunity, an invitation. It can become a chance for one last connection and to be able to say what's on our mind and in our heart. And I think about what a loss that was, like how I continue to grieve her, how I continue to love her and miss her. But I think about the weight that would have been added if I hadn't asked for that time with her. If we hadn't had that, it would have added to my grief astronomically. I would have felt like there were words that had gone unsaid. I would have felt guilty. I would have felt regret. Hopefully I would have been able to forgive myself because I am deserving of that, as we all are. I was just doing the best I could with what I knew and what I had. But I'm so thankful that I had that. And I feel like in general, in our society, in our culture, like we don't have that. We don't have the frame of reference and we don't have the permission. We're not often able to witness this happening, to learn from, our elders and other generations what we can do. It's pretty similar to my work. I started as a birth doula, and often when I was working with people who were pregnant and then laboring, that was their very first birth that they had attended, that they had seen, that they had observed. Like that was it. That was the one and only one. Whereas I'm coming in with 50 births under my belt. So like I know the realm. I have a familiarity with it. And because of that, I'm able to normalize and I'm able to offer up ideas for consideration and invitations to be able to like move closer to it if it feels comfortable and be actively involved as that makes sense for each person, so that hopefully there isn't that feeling of regret afterward, which can really weigh people down.
Thank you, Francesca. Listening to you reminds me of, again, a personal experience of not knowing enough, so death illiterate. again, as far as what's happening at the very end, and that we have choices. So when my father-in-law passed, he died in the hospital in the middle of the night, and we didn't know that we could like go there and be with him and just sit with him, for whatever amount of time before, next steps came in. Um, Sometimes when I talk about it, I refer to like when I was going to school, um, where I lived, you went to high school and then you went to college and it was like, wait a minute, I didn't realize until I went to school, went to college, that there was more choice involved. And, that, going back to something I love to listen to you talk about is the creativity of all of this. And that it's such a blessing to, discover, recognize, and use rituals and ceremonies, at our end of life care, but also, the powerful words that you use, so the invitation to think about it, to think about what matters most to you in your end of life care. And again, that, that you have choice and that becoming more death literate, um, we learn more about that so that we can also share. So I try to integrate that in the workshop that we do.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful when we feel like we don't have a roadmap at all. And it's really intimidating, right? To enter into that space and to feel like I have no compass, I have no direction, I have no guide. You're just fumbling around. And it doesn't need to be that way. And there are so many missed opportunities because of that. And so many choices, even for medical care, that are made that aren't actually in alignment with what people would truly want for themselves and what they truly value and how they feel about life and its quality and their hopes for themselves when we just are so close to having any of these conversations and sharing about it at all.
Exactly, the conversation. And, that's what, in my mind, and I think you may explicitly say this in the workbook, but that going through this process, certainly with the workshop, is giving us more opportunity and introduction to having those critical conversations to
Mhm.
start them. So, like starting the death journal or just starting the conversation. And, I've heard from so many people that went through the workshop that said, I used that I learned this in the workshop and that cracked it open so that then more people were like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, or tell me more, and that kind of thing. And just getting, again, their loved ones to reflect and think. And, like we just said, to understand there's choices.
Mhm. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Mhm. Well, I want to open it up now for questions, but I'm also opening it up to you, Francesca, to feel, free to riff off of the different questions that we get. Or if you're like, oh, I meant to share this, to, be able to do that as well. Yeah, Mary, welcome. Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear
There
me?
you go.
No,
Yeah.
good. I'm not technologically proficient. Anyway, what I was thinking is as we grow these communities of deaf literate people, hopefully we'll see and be able to influence the practices at many of the places where people do pass, like nursing homes, hospitals, etc. And I spent 30 years in a hospital, so I very familiar with the one hospital, with two hospitals that, I was present at many deaths, and what we could do. There's so much creativity that nursing homes and hospitals can come up with, another bed in the room, transferring the other patient, giving you that room as long as you need it, bringing refreshments by. Do you want to have music? Do you, all those kind of things. And I'm just thinking, if you know at our local hospital here, I have no idea what they offer as far as fine-tuned comfortable beds, all those kind of things. Is it homey? Is it still like a hospital room, etc.? So I just think that this wonderful education that we're getting is going to make it so much easier for so many people to have the kind of a death experience that you're describing, Francesca. And it's pretty special. It's important.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And, maybe due to your long tenure at that hospital, maybe you still have connections. Maybe you can stop by and just check and
Mhm.
see what is available, what is happening, what are the options. And going back to my aunt's death, that's something else I thought of was we're in this room, can we change the lighting? Can we make it a little less like fluorescent? And then I also offered up the idea of instead of the beeping and the machines, could we turn on the Beach Boys, which were her favorite? And could she listen to that instead of the hospital noises? I mean, those little touches can make such a difference in how it feels for people. And what I've noticed in my birth work and at the end of life is it also makes a difference as to how the providers enter in. When they
Yeah.
open the door and they say, oh, this doesn't look like just a regular patient room any longer. This looks like something that is very homey and something that reflects an actual human and a life that they've lived. They pause, they slow down, and they tend to
Mhm.
kind of like tread in more carefully and figure out how they can fit into the whole scene more thoughtfully. And I
Mhm.
love that. And why wouldn't we do that?
Right.
Mhm.
And quieter in a human, not so professional way,
Mm,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be sterile.
No. Mm-mm.
Mhm.
Thank
Mm.
you, Mary. Elizabeth, it's nice to see you.
Thank
There you
you.
go.
Thanks for having this today, Trish. I am signed up to do the training in September and I just can't wait. I started looking through the workbook, Francesca, and part of what has motivated me, this whole area has been something that I've been interested in since I was in my 20s, and now I'm getting another opportunity to look at where I want to be in the world, and and so I'm looking to really increase my literacy. And I have two parents that are 90, and so that's another reason why I'm just really interested in growing. My question is, what are the things other than working through the workbook and attending things like this, would you say would be on your top 3 or 4 list of ways to increase literacy?
That's a great question. And good for you for signing up for the series. You'll get so much meaning out of it. I have no doubt with Trish running things. So I think in addition to that, what I do to continually increase my literacy and depth of understanding is I read. So there are books that I read that are nonfiction, which sort of shed light. And sometimes I love them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I finish them, sometimes I won't. Kind of depends how relevant and appealing they are. But I will look to sometimes like a prescriptive self-help kind of guide. And then often, though, I look to memoir.
Mhm.
And I feel like memoir has so much to offer. It's generally very honest, it's very revealing. The authors are quite generous in what they actually share in the specifics. And it doesn't tell you everything about, like, let's say in the memoir, there's a particular kind of disease and death. Like that won't tell you every detail that will apply to every other death or every other disease that's that same one. Like it's just one person's experience, but still it has so much to offer. And I've read ones about all different types, not necessarily always death related, but even just like living with a particular condition and what that means for people and what that means for caregivers and the caregiver perspective. So it lets me kind of like drop into different people's lives in a way that certainly helps to broaden my understanding of things. And movies as well and documentaries, those, are a little more easy to consume in terms of how much time they take. But beyond that, I would say hospice volunteering, if you're not doing that, is an option to explore. And then if you feel comfortable making yourself available to the people who you know and saying, like if you're going through this kind of experience, please feel free to reach out to me, and like showing a willingness to kind of step into those times, not over promising anything and saying like I'm going to come in with my superhero cape and my magic wand and rescue you and make it all better, of course, but that you are willing to be by their side and accompany them through that journey. And that's, a kind act, and it will also increase your own learning as well.
Thank you.
Best wishes with it all.
Thank you, Francesca. You remind me of, and Francesca was one of the people that actually designed the UVM End-of-Life Doula certificate course. And I took that several years ago. And, what you were just talking about reminds me that really stuck with me. And I really try to practice and share it is respecting everybody's dignity. So, asking permission to come into the room, asking permission to fix the covers or the pillow or anything, recognizing that. And one of the things I think you emphasized really well was certainly as end of life doulas, we companion, we are with, we help navigate. We are not fixers. And, and it takes a lot of practice to, be able to sit quietly, thoughtfully, and listen and, ask, questions as it comes along. I think you did, again, a great job of communicating that. Uh, in, like I said, the design of the course, but certainly even in the workbook, that comes through. Appreciate that.
Thanks for pointing that out. It's definitely a practice and a balancing act that I'm always mindful of. Like, how do we offer compassion and even practical support without taking over and being directive, while still making sure that people feel like they have a voice, they have a say, they have agency, they're part of decision making, and that they're as in control of things as they can feel. Because when somebody has a incurable or terminal illness, it often makes people feel quite out of control. And like, so opportunities for making sure that they still can make choices for themselves, that they have informed decision-making opportunities is so important.
Francesca, could you do me a favor and go through something that I emphasize a lot in the workshop is the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion. I think it's so illustrative and it comes up throughout the workshop. Different participants bring it up.
Yeah, it's something that even in my upcoming book, I continue to revisit and circle back to because it's such a North Star for me. So in my definition of things, which may or may not be exactly the same as other people's, I think of sympathy and empathy as stepping stones toward compassion. And sympathy is sort of like your first stop, which is an important stop, but it's really when you feel sad for someone, when you feel pity for someone because they're going through something difficult, or maybe they're deep in grief, or they've gotten a terminal diagnosis. And so your heart sinks in response and you just feel really bad or sad for them and their situation. And then the next step would be empathy, which could involve that. It could involve this effort to try to match what the other person's feeling, but not necessarily only if it's bad or heaviness or sad or grief. It could also be, are you also experiencing some relief in some way or some anxiety or whatever emotion they might be feeling, or gratitude for times that they've had or the connection that they've shared. And you're constantly trying to just match that. You're trying to assess, acknowledge, and match always, like through the dynamic. And at the same time, you're thinking back to reference points in your past that were as similar as possible to the person's current situation. So you're trying to think like, well, how would I feel if I were them? And also, how have I felt in a similar time or experience as to this? And so you're just like putting in all this thought, focus, and energy into trying to match that person. So it's like you start with I feel sad or I feel bad, and then it's I feel how this person feels. But then compassion really turns the focus from, instead of thinking about me and how I'm feeling, how I have felt in the past, and trying to match however I am on the inside to however this person is presenting or my impression of that, which is subjective. It's moving beyond that and really focusing on the other person. So the statement I use with that is, I honor how this feels for you. And it's really an opportunity to try to learn directly from that person without guessing at it, without trying to match my inner landscape to yours or relate based on what I have endured in the past or suffered from in the past. It's really thinking about like, what is this for you? Please share with me. I want to learn from you. I want to know what this is like for you without getting all of my stuff sort of jumbled into the mix of that. It's creating enough space so that that person has the chance to explore it fully and, wrestle with it and maybe vent about it and start to maybe make some sense of it and maybe identify their inner knowing and inner wisdom and their own preferences for next steps as well. So it's creating a lot more space and not thinking about what I would want, what I would do, instead really trying to support that person's journey into identifying it for themselves. Yeah, and in that way, it tends to be less draining, less depleting than empathy can be and sympathy can be for people. And a lot of it also comes down to trust and having trust in the other person, cultivating that, which can be difficult when that person's maybe doubting their own ability, their own strength, their own wisdom. They're feeling disconnected from that. As a doula, I try to silently hold that trust even when they're not feeling it, and it becomes kind of an invitation for them to maybe tune in and tap back into it when I can say and I can feel fully that like actually you have whatever you need inside and around you, and my role is to try to help create the conditions that you can tap back into your inner voice, inner strength, inner knowing, and external supports that will help you through this time of difficulty, including me and other people.
My puppy, it keeps putting his nose under my hand. So I'm trying to turn. DC, you have to go downstairs. I don't have. Oh, I do have a snack for you. Okay, lay down. Thank you. Okay, real life.
Francis,
Go ahead, Mary. Go
um,
ahead.
do you have any special learnings or pieces of wisdom related to dealing with children at the time that a parent is dying? I know that all ages of children, but have you come across some of the best practices, if you would, for a death doula um, to implement at those times?
Yeah, it's such a difficult space to enter into. I feel like because we have fewer kind of scripts in place, like we know a little bit more if we're going to approach an adult, how that conversation might go. We don't completely know, but we kind of have a sense of how it might go. With kids, it's so up in the air that can lead to a lot of people just shying away from even checking in with children and causing them to feel more and more alone in it. So I love that it's on your mind and that it sounds like you have a willingness to step in. I do have a picture book, and I have an accompanying activity book that goes with it, which has tips on how to have conversations with children. And in that book, it was inspired by a conversation I had with my grandmother back when I don't even know, I was maybe like 6 or something. I was little and didn't have a filter at all. And I just looked up at her and the sun was hitting her face and I could see her wrinkles as she was smiling. And I said, Grammy, are you going to die? And just clear out of the blue. And I think she was maybe in her 50s and in good health. She just died it hasn't even been a year. So she had lots more life to live. And she just chuckled and she said, well, a little caught off guard. I will someday I will die, but that's okay. And I'm really happy for the life that I've had. And it was like a simple answer to a really big question, but it was just enough. And it was what I needed. I didn't need to be overwhelmed at that time. But what it showed me was that if I had big questions, I could go to her and she would answer them. And that's really important for kids to know. So I think we have to be mindful not to overwhelm them with information. Sometimes we're just sort of sprinkling a little bit in, or we're just demonstrating that we are available and that you can come back and talk about this more and more. I mean, with little kids, I don't know if you've also witnessed this, but in my experience, what I've seen is it's so refreshing. So, I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it's also refreshing and very inspiring because a little kid who's devastated by a loss will allow themselves often, if they feel safe within like a safe environment, they will allow themselves to be completely wrecked by it. Wailing, kicking, screaming, throwing things, crying, sobbing, like full on expression. And then 5 minutes pass and they're up and they're coloring and they're playing and they're talking about something completely different. And then they cycle back to really feeling the loss. And then they go back to being a kid again. And I mean, I think that probably we could learn a lot from children. And instead of stifling so much as adults, maybe we give ourselves a little more permission or like carve out times that we can fully feel and express our grief like a kid might, but also being available for those conversations, trying to not pretend like we know everything and that we have all of the answers. I think that's really important. Being able to say, that's a really big question. I still ask that question even as an adult. And I may not have all the answers, but we can wonder together about this and we can talk about it. And we could talk about what we hope might be true and what we believe might be true. And you could talk about other belief systems related to that. And with a kid who's like facing their parents' death, I think any way that they can feel safely involved in the experience is really important, and that they still feel like there's a connection happening and that there will be a continued connection afterward. My book is called Map of Memory Lane, and a person that I graduated high school with, her husband was dying from cancer, and she had gotten my book, and we had been in communication, and her kids were pretty young, like under 10, 2 kids. And the night, so they had been reading the book, they had been doing the activity book, which means like you write out memories, you put pictures, you could print off these pages, like as many pages as you want, keep adding to it. And so they had been working on that with their dad and with their mom, and it was an ongoing project. And so the night that the dad was actually dying, they knew he had shifted into active dying. The mom, somebody I graduated with, asked her daughter, like, do you want to say goodbye to daddy? Like, this would be your chance to say goodbye, which I think is beautiful. You don't put pressure on, you don't tell them what they need to do. You give them the opportunity, and you try to prepare them as much as possible, but you take the pressure off. So she did. She went in, she had her goodbye, and then she went back to her mom and gave her a hug. And she said, I'm going to be okay. And she said, oh, okay, you are? And she said, yeah, I know I can go to memory lane whenever I need to.
Wow.
And so that was going to be her coping strategy that she was going to lean on, knowing that she would miss her dad and knowing that she would always have those memories to cherish together.
Thanks for
And
sharing.
I will share it again in the follow-up, that gives you the links to, the video and everything. I have on my link tree all of Francesca's books, and I have used Memory Lane myself, and it's really helpful for children of all ages
Mm.
to use it and to like go, yeah, and there can be a very peaceful feeling about that. So yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Mhm. Yeah, and in the picture book, I made sure to feature, so it's Nana and a grandchild, and in it, Nana is introducing the idea of memory lane and how that's a place you can go visit to be with those moments that you shared. And in it, it shows Nana going to memory lane. She said, I go to memory lane sometimes. Like when I'm missing, I think she talks about her dad. And so it shows Nana sitting, and then like the little thought bubble of her going to memory lane about her childhood and her own father. So it shows that like even adults go to memory lane and use that, which is a comfort for kids who might be feeling otherwise very alone in their grief.
So would they sell that in the child section of a store or with death-oriented books?
I mean, if you go to a local bookstore, and you would probably have to ask them to order it, but they would be able to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the link that I have, the curated book list that I have, I use courtesy of being enlightened by Francesca. I use bookshop.org. So when you follow that link, you can choose your favorite local bookstore, and, so that they get, the credit for that and get it to you.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Mhm.
you're welcome. Anybody else? Pastor Larry, have any questions?
No questions, but this has been very, very good.
Good. Well, I'm
Very
so glad
good.
you're here.
Yeah.
Good.
And if you're interested in what's going on, there's a website you can visit, gals, doulas. I just looked up the Greek definition of that word, and very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
livingwatershospicehouse.org. livingwatershospicehouse.org. We're getting ready to build. And are these folks local, Patricia?
Not everybody. No, we've got New York represented, and
Uh-huh.
we have Chittenden County and
Uh-huh.
other places.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you so much. Very
Yeah, and I can't
enlightening.
wait to hear more about the hospice house. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Check out the website. You'll see what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Margot. Oh, you're still on mute. I know it's hard on the phone. There you
Did
go.
that work? Okay. I can't see anybody, but I I was listening to what Mary was saying in terms of, what you can do in a hospital room, and it reminded me of when my mom was in hospice. What they do there. They the the lighting was good, and um the they had people that had donated um handmade blankets, quilts, and every person that came through hospice got one of those. And I mean, there was a huge area for the families that they could go in, and people donated snacks and tea, and I mean, it was just delightful, and if you wanted music, you could have music. If you didn't want music, you didn't have music. And I mean, it definitely made it better, definitely made it better.
Good.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Marielle, I'm going to come to you last. So you can, I put it in the chat about the upcoming um, event actually in Craftsbury, being a friend in grief, guidance for caring neighbors, colleagues, and loved ones. So you can talk a little bit about that at the very end. Nancy, I'm so glad you're here. Do you have any questions? Okay.
No, I don't have any questions. I'm sorry I was late. I was doing the driving job. So, but I I feel just the brief time I was here, warmth and caring from everybody for each other. That's lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Helen, I'm glad you're here.
Hi, thank you. I finally had an opportunity to join you. So I've listened through most of this. It's a pleasure meeting you all. I'm really just launching my business now, I used to be a hospice nurse 20 years ago. So I always knew where my passion would be. But now that I'm looking forward to retirement, I know I can follow my passion and my dreams. So um, information for me really is about learning how to approach this from like the layman's perspective, not to bring in my medical knowledge, not to bring in and jump into that role as the nurse. So I'm making sure that I have kind of my pieces in place and taking workshops and learning what it's like to be at that layman's level instead of the medical person. So I appreciate all your comments, and Francesca, thank you. It's been wonderful hearing. I'm going to be researching a little bit more within those links. And Trish, thank you for sending the emails to keep me following with you folks. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Marielle.
Well, I was thinking that the kind of being present with people who are facing their end, uh, I think it is really helpful to extrapolate, or we can extrapolate those same kinds of things are very effective in any circumstances in a way. I mean, if we are really good listeners, it is so valuable as a way to maybe bridge. These are such hard times right now, and I think good listening skills, honoring where another person is coming from, inviting them to share their stories is, yeah, I just think it can be something that is valuable all through our lives. And Trish, I realize that I have I have my announcement out in my car, so maybe you can help me with this. But I'm a part of a group, a Death Cafe with Trish, and a small group of us have gotten together to try to form a hub, an online hub of information for people about having meaningful lives and having support as they approach their deaths or try to support those who are dying, and also after death. And it's called NEK Death Care Community, and it's, as I say, it's a online hub, and it has various resources. It has lists of doulas in the area. It has lists of books that are useful for children, for adults, movies, music, information about funerals, about green burial, various options. We're building it, and so there's also, hopefully, as we become more adept, things about suicide, those kinds of issues. So anyway, and Trish, can you put that?
Yeah, it's in the chat. That on June 8th, Francesca will be in person in Craftsbury, and she will be presenting. I'm just so looking forward to this. She and I have been communicating over quite several months over what I see as a lack for me of understanding more about grief. And so the title of her presentation on June 8th is Being a Friend in Grief, Guidance for Caring Neighbors, Colleagues, and Loved Ones. And it's hosted by the Northeast Kingdom Death Care Community. Registration is available on the site. It's limited to 40 people. Again, in my follow-up email to you all, I will provide those links and that information again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Pastor Larry, you have a last word before Francesca.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to say, now I can't recall who said it, but I like this. We need to have a more human, non-professional approach. That really resonated with me. And then I think that we underestimate what I call the ministry of presence. And somebody said we're not fixers, and that's very important. You know, I have a tendency, I want to fix people, and it takes discipline not to do so, and just let things flow naturally and organically. And every situation is different, you know. But yeah, non-human, not more human, non-professional, and don't underestimate the ministry of presence, and respect dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. This has been very good. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Francesca, thank you, thank you, thank you. Any last words you'd like to remind us? What's your new book? Can you tell us?
Well, the new book will be, I haven't been saying the title out loud. I think I've almost settled on it, but it is a community grief care guidebook. So it really goes well with the workshop. The workshop has been informing the book writing. The book writing has been informing the workshop. The workshop has been really well received. There's a ton of interest, a lot of demand, and people are showing up eager for this foundational knowledge, grief literacy, and also actionable steps so that they can show up and support people well without exhausting themselves. So that's what the guidebook will be, and I can't wait to share it with people. And I think similar to the workbook, it will not only be beneficial and informative for individual readers who are caring community members, it will also become a tool for educators, community educators, and people who want to raise awareness as well.
Great.
I have one more
Looking forward to
question.
it. Yes, go ahead, Mary.
So in your death journal, the one you write in all the time, do you have dividers for categories, or is it no? Okay, all right. I'm going to
No,
start
it's
mine in a minute. So
oh yay! I love that. I love that for you.
It's messy.
No,
it's
and
messy.
it's messy,
Okay.
which
Sure.
is not my usual mode.
Uh-huh.
I am like a recovering perfectionist. I am more type A than anything else. So I try to give myself a lot of freedom to just be creative within the death journal. And I try to date things. So, there could be something 3/4 of the way through that's from 5 years ago and something fresh and new that's on page 2. Like I can't tell you there's not like rhyme or reason to it, but it's sort of like a wild, delightful trip through my mind and my years as well.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And you will be hearing from me again. And you will get all the benefits of all the links that we talked about. So take care. Next month, our conversation is with Angela Shook, who is an end-of-life doula and companion animal doula. So we'll be looking forward to that. Thanks again, Francesca. See you in June.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.